Welcome to the Relearn Game Changers podcast wrap-up show for Friday the 13th of November. It's Black Friday, but more importantly, it's World Kindness Day. And in the spirit of World Kindness, Adriana Di Prado and our regular producer, Oliver Cummins, are on a secret mission for the Sir Ken Robinson Appreciation Society today. Where are we going to fill the gap? How are we going to do it? Adriana Di Prado, his place can't be filled by one person, not even two people, but three people. So we've got four hosts of the wrap-up show for you today. I'm going to ask each of the three other hosts to introduce themselves in turn. We're going to start with Saka, and then we're going to go to Aaron, and then we're going to go to Brian. Saka, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me. Hi, my name is Šárka Králíčková, and I am from the Czech Republic, and I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years, entrepreneur in education, and I actually am part of public schools, even if I'm an entrepreneur, because we create courses and clubs inside of public schools. Because as I always say, it was very easy to start another language school or alternative school, but I really do care about kids in public schools because I feel that not too much attention is actually paying to them for better education there. So I would love to increase that awareness about that and make the education more innovative and put all of the passion and fun back to schools.
I'm glad you mentioned that word fun, because if we don't let children play, we're never going to get them learning about anything. How are you today, Aaron?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Do you want to introduce yourself to the audience just a little bit, please?
Sure, you bet. Yeah, my name's Aaron Eden, and let's see, I'm executive director at the Institute for Applied Tinkering in San Francisco, California. A couple of our programs are Brightworks, which is a K-12 independent school some of you may have heard of, and Tinkering School, which is a camps and all other kinds of fun activities outside of a school setting, working with kids to tinker and build things and explore. And then I'm also co-founder of a transformation design firm called Eliad Group, and we work with schools and organizations around the world to rehumanize our collective endeavors. And I'm super excited to be here with you all.
Fantastic. Now, Šárka, you're in Prague. Aaron, you're in Monterey, California. I just want to give a shout out to the family of our of the Chief Operations Officer of School for Tomorrow and the Game Changers podcast, Matthew Donlan. His family are all in Monterey, and particularly his mum, Elia. I want to give a real shout out to her right now.
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking about you and the amazing night we had with enormous tomahawk steaks and tequila, but more of that another time. Our third co-host today is Brian Gibson. And Brian, you're in Dublin tonight, so introduce yourself. Everybody knows who you are anyway, but introduce yourself.
Oh God, that's humbling in a sense. My name is Brian Gibson. I work with LearnLife. How would I describe myself in LearnLife? The role: I'm a researcher, paradigm champion, alliance champion. I suppose in the background, I'm a bit of a ninja as well. I do many things, wear many hats with the organization. Before LearnLife, I was a primary school teacher for just over 10 years. Worked from kids from around the age of 6 up to 11. In the meantime, decided educational sort of traditional systems were broken. Decided to retrain to a master's degree in law and sustainable development. And with a view to working, maybe developing a new curriculum or a new learning framework in sustainable development. I went to Canada for a couple of years, worked in a few jobs, and then discovered LearnLife and came over to Spain, and then I'm back in Ireland at the minute because of COVID. And and the journey continues.
There it is. So what do you get if you put a ninja, a tinkerer, an entrepreneur, and a bloke with a beard together around a virtual campfire? You get a halftime show. So that's what we're doing today. We're doing the halftime show. Folks, I want you to imagine here that you're doing your best sports commentating at the moment. If you haven't seen much sports commentating, that's even better because you can just make it up. What have you been seeing so far at this amazing festival of learning that you think is really actionable? Because that's the key, isn't it? We need ideas that are actionable in schools? I might start with you, Shaka. What have you been seeing? What have you been experiencing?
Well, I've been experiencing and seeing really the leadership. I'm seeing this in many topics that I feel that we are taking down the leadership into everyday's life and to everyday's people, and not just because lots of people are thinking about leadership like for the guys in big positions and the government. And now I'll see more and more videos and the movements that it's really the leadership is going down into like kids' lives and our self-leadership, and how we can you know, our voices can be more heard and seen. So that's what I've been experiencing here, and I really love it, even with parents, you know, and with kids with different disabilities, that how can we help them to really be strong leaders. Yeah.
So let's stick with leadership for a moment, folks, because that's a good first topic for us to have a wee chat about. And I really love the idea of leadership and voice and community. What are you seeing emerging on that topic of leadership and the type of leadership that's going to help people thrive in their world? What are you seeing, Aaron?
You know, I mean, I think, especially in terms of what's happening right now with COVID, but I think that this applies generally in education, is that we know we get the highest quality education when the educators have the autonomy to deliver on clearly defined principles and goals. And I think that in the case of COVID, perhaps especially because so much on the fly kind of decision making has to be happening about what do I do in this incredibly unique space in this moment with these kids who are having incredibly unique experiences in their own lives that need to be dealt with. For leaders who are able to be really clear about what are the principles that are going to drive our decisions and our actions moment to moment, and then providing space for people to act on those principles with their own direction and with the groups that they're engaging with, I think is what I think the best advice I'm seeing is that that's what needs to happen.
So we start with the notion of voice and community, and from voice and community we derive principles, and out of that we get self-determination and self-authorship of a preferred future by the folks concerned. Brian, what are you seeing in terms of the good oil on leadership that's coming out? And there's so many awesome presentations that we've seen so far.
No, I've been in the back end a lot, but it's not a bad thing. I've connected with a lot of people, and what I've noticed, even in the titles of a lot of people's talks, that there's a lot of people, no matter what they're interested in and their passions and their sort of their love in education, there's a general sort of coming together on relationships still, that relationships are binding, and that's where leadership starts. And I think if you look at leadership from a traditional point of view of the hierarchy, it's not really working anymore. And I think, Aaron, you sort of hinted upon it there about autonomy and self-determination as well, Phil, you mentioned. And I think in an organization that really wants to bring leadership forward, it needs to become more horizontal and more of a teal structure. And I think, what I've noticed is people are starting to understand that we need to give autonomy to people and actually create leaders of people. And actually the best leaders are the ones who are creating leadership for others. And they're the ones who are given the power, and the power is maybe not the best word, given the agency for people to be able to sort of navigate their own lives and become their own leader. And if you can become your own leader, then you can lead others as well, but it has to be selfless. And I think this week at Relearn, there's a great community together who understand that.
So we've gone from voice and community to principles and values to self-determination and self-authorship, and we end up with agency and selflessness and community. It's that whole developmental thing around, dare I say it, a life of purpose. Of course, I'd say that, but it's that whole notion that what we're trying to do is get communities to work out what's really meaningful for them and align with, but also at the same time empower people to connect their sense of purpose to what they're doing and really bring it to life. I'm really enjoying the way the conversation's going. Aaron, leadership's one thing that we've been deriving from the festival so far. What else have you been seeing that's really caught your eye?
I think another theme, kind of like Brian was saying in terms of relationship, and it relates to this theme, but it's a theme that's very dear to my heart in my practice and my work with communities, is co-creation. And that's a term that can mean a lot of things to everybody, but really ultimately, as Brian was also saying, we're learning that conventional or traditional hierarchies don't work well for kind of emergent adaptive organisms, right? Or organizations. And so you have to have relationships that are based on equity and shared vision creation and shared understanding of the ways to achieve our goals and visions. And so that really requires this kind of equity-based relating, shared purpose, right? And so co-creation for me is a word that I heard a couple of times, and I think it's so incredibly important in achieving the goals that, whether it's leadership or teacher in a classroom or any other thing that we're involved in, if we can create and hold space for co-creative activity to happen, then we start to get the outcomes that we all say that we want.
Sarkar, and I'm wondering in the work that you're doing at the moment, are you seeing that same sort of co-creation thing emerging, that same hierarchy, flattening of hierarchy, that same networking, that same sort of almost sort of alliance approach to working with things?
Yeah, I think that teachers are really like coming together, but I don't see it together with the directors and the government and the inspections. So they really want to do something different, and the teachers, if they are innovative, they sometimes can't do it because they have those rules and restriction. So I really think that the autonomy, to give more autonomy to schools, would really help them. Even now with COVID situation, they would know how to lead their schools, but they just have to wait for the government to decide what to do, and they are trapped. And that's what I would like to work on, because this is something that I see that the schools sometimes they don't even know their mission and vision for their own school, to create it together with parents and with those kids, because they are still waiting for someone, still waiting for if it's not the government, then it's the inspection or the mayor of the city, and they are just not the leaders. They are followers, but they would love to lead, but they can't, to build the better community between a teacher and director plus the kids and parents, so we can really have these schools like turning into clubs. That's what I see, the community, the clubs. Like, just imagine if you can turn a classroom into a club, just in your mindset, how much it would bring joy, even that. And the teacher knows the kids and he can collaborate, or she can collaborate with them better. The community and working for the environment for the town and around schools, I think it would bring people more together. And now we are getting more separated and separated. That's another thing that what I see.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? With the best intentions in the world, governments regulate, and in doing that regulation, they end up controlling. And the second you introduce control into the system, it then becomes about compliance rather than the freedom, the spirit, the soul, the heart and soul that sort of sits within education. We do that at government levels. We also do that at school levels, and we do that at classroom levels as well too. I think it's the cancer of education. It stops that realization of that which is human. And in particular, I think you're right, Sarkar, that capacity that systems have to pull people to go apart rather than bring them together. And sometimes I think that the measure of the greatest leaders at the highest levels in our world today are their capacity to bring people together and to find systems and structures that do that. Brian, is this a good time for us to talk about the Alliance? Because I know that Learn Life is really trying to bring together like-minded people from around the world to think about how to take that big step forward and up in education.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say about the Alliance is, yeah, we're trying to unite and sort of aggregate thought leaders, change leaders, educational leaders, innovators, but passion pushers as well. We're trying to bring people onto a platform united to bring about a global shift in education. I suppose to bring it back before we talk about the Alliance just briefly, we designed and sort of put together a paradigm. Stephen Harris and I, over the past sort of couple of years, and there was obviously other people in our organization involved in that. I was one of the head lead researchers in that, and I think from that, well, Stephen Harris has many years of experience. He's over 40 years experience in education, and I'm sure you guys know him. And one of the things he did in Sydney, it's in Northern Beaches School. He knocked down the school and rebuilt it with no classrooms, and that was in the 90s. And the reason I'm telling you that is because he saw a vision and opportunity for change, and he brought. So the guy he's an incredible vision for learning. And the paradigm that he put together, these elements of change, he's got the understanding and knowledge of what that vision would look like. And the paradigm's there, but we understand that it's not something that we have reinvented. It's not, we haven't reinvented the wheel, so to speak. It's something that is common sense in a lot of ways, and we need a global community to come on board with us to reshape education through that paradigm. There's people who have more expertise than we do, who could help us shape that paradigm. There's people who will be able to network with others in our Alliance. There's people who are emerging in the education at the minute who probably need to understand that. I mean, in my experience in education, I started off probably with an instinct, knowing that the system wasn't very strong, and I think there's people who, those passion pushers that I mentioned, they need to be on the Alliance. They're the guys who need to understand that the system, there's other alternative ways of learning and teaching as well, and the Alliance is that network that we're going to use, and we are using to unite a diverse audience and network of people around the world to try and share and learn together and debate and innovate together, and that's what we're trying to do.
Fantastic. Aaron, what are you seeing at the moment in terms of this whole shift towards bringing people together in Alliance rather than just doing their own thing?
I mean, like you say, yeah, I mean, we've certainly in the world today, we have a much greater opportunity to connect with each other and learn from each other in ways that that we couldn't before. Ultimately, what it comes down to, though, is do we have the ability to act on what we learn? And I think the one of the most important things, as you were saying, Brian, none of any of this stuff any of us are talking about is new in terms of the things that should be happening, right? But what we have not seemed to be able to solve, and many of us get, I've been incredibly lucky in being able to play in building learning environments from the ground up with no restrictions. No, you even have to learn this or that. Just what do you and the community you're working with think you need, build what, and we do it, right? So some of us have had the opportunity, and there are bright spots around the world where we've been able to practice the things we know that need to be practiced. But getting enough people the opportunity to do that has proven to be the thing we can't seem to overcome. Like, that's the thing we don't seem to know how to do. And we do have some kind of countries or systems that we look to, like Finland, say, that transformed its education system 30 years ago or whatever it was. And they, by the way, are featured in that book. I think it's The Smartest Kids in the World, where it talks about the three things that make transformation happen, which is clarity of what you're doing, autonomy to do it, and really good training to be able to do it. The three things that allow for schools and systems to work. So I think that's the thing we have to figure out, how to learn from each other. And we even know the structures of systems that support that kind of learning. But getting our communities and our governments, and Phil, the people that you were talking about that have the power to determine where the money goes and all of that, to build enough of those structures to allow that kind of learning to happen, that's the thing we can't seem to do. And so hopefully we can learn from each other in alliances and other ways. Yes, about the practices of when we have the freedom to learn and teach how we think needs to happen, how do you do that? But even more so, how do we change our communities and our governments and our systems to be able to have the opportunity to practice in that way? And I think that's if an alliance can't do that, it doesn't matter how many good practices we're sharing on how to, co-create learning spaces with kids, if we can't figure out how to get them the opportunities to do that.
Sarkar, do you have some thoughts about how to enable people to feel that sense of opportunity? You're an entrepreneur. You find ways to do things that are really, really important to you. In our global Game Changers podcast series, particularly in series 3 and 4, we've been talking to a lot of people like yourself who are entrepreneurs and who have entrepreneurial instincts. And inevitably, they talk about a moment where they realized they needed to take a big step forward and up, and how they felt and they did that. And the challenge is that when we talk to most of our colleagues, they know they need to take that big step forward and up, and then they pull back. How do we help people to take that big step forward?
To take the big step forward, I think that we all need to start with us, and when I 3 years ago, when I felt that the entrepreneurship it's not working, that I cannot help us as many. We teach 350 kids every year, like 3 of us, right? And for 18 years, and we've been struggling with the money and to let people, to still keep the low price for the children. So I said, okay, so Sharka, you need to change something with your mindset to really stop being a teacher and become an entrepreneur, so I can help. And then I put together the vision for the ecosystem, so we can really start the online and offline clubs, and how to bring the. I think that the main thing is in the personal development, that I think that it is missing, that we are still thinking about even the systems and new methodologies and things for children, but we sometimes forget about ourselves when we do have the time to work on ourselves. And that's how I created a Spinto method, that we have all the knowledge on the internet, and we are still taking it as an information. So how can we take it and twist it into education with all the open questions that we can have, and we can work with everything that we have on the internet, but like upside down, that you are not just saying, okay, I learned that and I know how to do that and that, but how I can take it and twist it, the little pieces from the video into your own life, that you are in the center, and you have the discovery about yourself. Like every time when I'm gonna ask you the questions from the video or the piece, I'm gonna take it and twist it into your life, and you discover yourself more, even if you're a teacher or a kid. So if we can change the education more into open questions, so we can, it's happening in project-based learning and so on, and other different methods. But I don't think it's still enough. That's still what I see here in public schools, that the kids are still here and sitting and listening, and the teachers are talking, and then sometimes there is the interaction. But how can we let them think more and speak more, and then they can go and change things for themselves to know who they want to become?
what I'm hearing from you there, Sharka, is, and Aaron, is a combination of two things. That we have to create the conditions where teachers can take the big step forward and up. And that might include clarity, autonomy, and training. But at the same time, teachers themselves need to do the work on themselves so that they're ready and prepared to take the big step forward and up. And teachers aren't that great at doing self-care, are they, Brian? They're not that great at looking after themselves and developing themselves, and they can find themselves rusted in place because they're spending all their time looking after other people and other people's children and all of those immediate needs in front of them. How do we help teachers to, if you like, step back and reflect on themselves and care for themselves and care for their own development more?
Yeah, that's a huge question, and we could spend an hour talking about it, and I would love to. I think it's a leadership issue, but it's also a systemic issue, and I think you need to look outside the learning community. Well, the learning community itself has a responsibility for everybody who works in that, and you're relying on leadership to be able to support that. But then if you move into the systemic problems, you look at things like the pressure on standardized assessment and, the pressure that teachers are under to get young kids to perform in a model that doesn't suit everybody. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that's where the issue lies for teachers. And I know from my own experience, when you had a class of 30 kids and you were trying to put them through the same fun, it was heartbreaking to see some of the kids who were deemed as failures in that system. And I think that's where it begins for a teacher whenever they lose that vitality. And I think that's part of the issue in education at the minute is teachers are losing vitality and a reason for that passion that you talk about, Philip. They're losing the desire to want to help kids after a number of years because they realize that the system is broken. Graham Brown Martin was on the other night actually in a keynote speech, and he mentioned, I asked the question, how do you create a culture of learning that is attractive for kids? And he says, get the kids to build it themselves. And it's the same, for teachers. We need to enable teachers and educators to design what they want and trust them to build what they see in front of their community, because it's not a one size fits all. We all know this. We're all experienced enough in education to realize that. And if you really want to help teachers, then we need to change that system from the top down and from the bottom up as well. From the bottom up, I mean, get the kids to design what they want. Kids are so disengaged in school at the minute with the way, the exponential curve of technological advancement has just totally taken off, and education's fallen behind. And that's the bottom up. We need to think about what learning should be like from a kid's perspective, and then from the top down, we need to think systemically. How can we help our teachers? We need to change it. We need to change the system.
And Philip, I just had something to add to that, if it's okay, but I don't want to disrupt the flow.
No, go for it, man.
You're thinking on where to direct things to. But
No, that's good. I think Brian's done. Are you done, Brian? Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, so I think there's a really critical framing of that question of teacher wellness that's important here. So what I see a lot of, and I've actually seen a lot of teachers kind of talking about this on my Twitter feed too, is that, and also in the kind of the racism and kind of that work, as well as that, we talk about resilience and self-care, but unfortunately, oftentimes the best we can do when the systems are too broken is that our self-care and resilience just goes into surviving. And so we ask teachers to do, take a break, take some care, do whatever. But then it's just to be able to go in and sort of suffer the thing that we're suffering without it totally crushing us. And when we talk about, as you framed it, Phil, how do we help people understand how to take that next step? Like, to me, that means how do you get out of the place that's crushing you, or the system that's crushing you and the kids you're with because of the expectations of, parents and government and et cetera.
And Aaron, and that's particularly the challenge for mid-career teachers, isn't it? Because that first 5 years, you're just trying to work out what's going on and who your people are and what your place is and the basics of your craft, and then you start to build some expertise in it, and then you probably get to around about the top of your pay scale about 10 years in, and by then you've got a house and a mortgage and payments and possibly kids and obligations and so on and so on and so on. And then you become increasingly aware that this is it. This system is there and it's not changing. And it's benign paternalism of some sort, but the only thing that's going to change from year to year to year is the kids. But even then, after a number of years, you realize that there is a sameness to all of this sort of stuff. Yeah. And that's, unless you've got the capacity to pull yourself back from that, then it's very, very dispiriting. And great teachers can get lost along the way. The teachers who stay within the system are either incredibly resilient, and some of them get very cynical, of course, or they've worked out that secret sauce on how to reinvent themselves. Yeah. And if we don't have a system that supports teachers to do that reinvention of themselves progressively throughout their careers and to reflect on where they're going and to allow them, I can't tell you the number of schools I've gone into where, the 6th grade teacher has been teaching 6th grade for 20 years. And you just sit there and go, that can't be good for anybody. And the teacher might feel comfortable. And it's probably a whole lot less work than it was the first year that they did it. And there's probably quite a lot of status associated with it. Because, when you're the 6th grade teacher, it's the end of elementary school and everyone loves you because the kids are glorious at that age and all of that sort of thing. But then slowly inside, that vitality has gone. Sharka, I just wonder, how do we help teachers to retain a sense of fun, a sense of vitality, to help them feel as though they've got the capacity to reinvent themselves, to make decisions, to do what they think is good and right?
Yeah, I think that they need to become the leaders, of their own heart, because they feel like kids, they are trapped and they don't see the value in themselves anymore sometimes, because they are still doing and working for the kids and for the papers and for others. But who are they actually? Who are they, inside of themselves, so they can really go and step into their passion and innovation again. And if you're, as you said, if you're teaching still the same stuff for 5-10 years and you don't innovate because the others tell you don't, because the other teachers then feel that they are not doing enough because you are the innovative person and the other one is not. So then, you're actually doing something different, and then they say, well, stop doing it. And then it goes into into nothing. And then you lose the joy. But I still believe that each of the teacher has this inside of themselves, and the personal development and working and showing them their value, so they can have the time for themselves to work on, and also the nowadays materials that we can bring the nowadays things into education, that it's more connected into the life, and that kids and teachers can go and experience that immediately, so they have the results and they can try it and share it, and it's not happening. Yeah.
Okay, and Aaron and Brian, thank you very much. I'm gonna pull up stumps there. That's a cricket term for anybody who doesn't understand cricket. I'm sorry, your life is not blessed as mine is. I want to finish on that point about value. I think value is really, really important. I think we struggle in education with value because we equate the world of commerce with the dark side rather than the light side. The chairman of A School for Tomorrow and Circle Education, who's a very great mentor and friend to me, is a guy called John Layton, and he's an accountant by training, and he's from Glasgow. So he's pretty tough, strong background. He's also an international masters level cyclist, and he keeps talking to me about the importance of the exchange of value in human affairs. That if we don't provide teachers with value for what they do, and that value might be remuneration, but let's face it, in most parts of the world, we're not going to pay teachers that much because they're largely government systems and we can't afford to pay teachers that much. In some areas, we could probably pay them a little bit more, but it's less about a remunerative value and more about a social value and a status value. If we don't recognize the importance of what folk are doing, you know, that's the challenge. Then they can't bring the value to the lives of the kids. They can't do that piece, which, you know, we've been talking about it for 20, 25 years now, that notion of value add in education, which is really about growth. So I think all of this conversation, eventually, I love Shaka, I love your phrase there about people needing to become the leaders of their own hearts. But at the end of the day, if we can't build systems and we can't build structures that allow the people within them to grow properly and to create the conditions in which people can grow mutually through a community of learning, then we're destined to repeat those dark classrooms that Pink Floyd talked about in Another Brick in the Wall. And Brian, you know me in music, I think that's a good place to finish, is Pink Floyd. And in the words of my favourite song of theirs, for all three of you, Wish You Were Here. Unfortunately, we can't be, but it's great to gather around the campfire. Shaka and Aaron and Brian, thank you very much for joining us today on the Relearn Game Changers podcast wrap-up, halftime show. Enjoy your weekends coming up. Don't forget, folks, that in the week to come, we've got lots and lots of workshops. If you're in Australia on Wednesday night and you've got sleep problems, you could come along to my workshop and we could solve your sleep problems for you. I'm sure everybody else here is doing amazing work. Keep up the good work, folks, and let's go. The Game Changers podcast is produced by Oliver Cummins for Orbital Productions. It's powered by schoolfortomorrow.com and circle.education. It's available on Apple Podcasts, on SoundCloud, on Spotify, and on Google. If you like what you hear, tell your friends, subscribe, like, you know what to do. Let's go.